What seemed like a routine traffic stop quickly turned into a disaster for the officer when he brutally mistreated a black female general, completely unaware that she had direct access to the highest leaders in the country. From initial arrogance to the shocking moment when the truth was revealed, everything unfolds dramatically in this video. If you care about stories that expose injustice, make sure to subscribe to join us, and don't forget to press 1 if you enjoyed the video. If you weren't fully satisfied or want fresher content, press 0. Stay tuned for more powerful and emotional stories. The heavy thud of boots echoed across a dim suburban parking lot. General Sierra Brooks stood firm in her immaculate U.S. Army uniform, medals gleaming under the lights. Calm but alert, she explained herself to Officer Derek Monroe, a stocky, red-faced cop whose anger escalated by the second. "You don't tell me what to do," Monroe snarled, stepping into her space, spitting as he jabbed a finger at her. "You're just another one of them pretending to be somebody." General Brooks clenched her fists but stayed composed. "Officer, I've shown you my ID. I'm a United States Army general." "Shut up," Monroe barked, grabbing her roughly and slamming her against her SUV. Her head hit the window with a dull thud. Pain flared, but she stood firm. Monroe then did the unthinkable, raising his baton, ready to strike. "You think that uniform makes you better than me?" he roared. Before he could act, the growing crowd erupted. Phones were raised, capturing everything. General Brooks, her voice cold as steel, stared him down. "You have no idea who you're dealing with," she said. Monroe hesitated, but the damage was done. He didn't know yet that Sierra Brooks wasn't just any general. Her authority reached far beyond the local police. Within hours, his world would collapse. Earlier that evening, General Brooks had just left the Pentagon after a grueling day of meetings on national security. Driving home through a quiet Maryland town, she stopped at a convenience store for water and gummed small comforts for the road. The store was nearly empty. She spent less than 5 minutes inside. But when she returned, Officer Monroe was waiting, patrol lights flashing. Confused, Brooks approached politely. "Good evening, officer. Is there a problem?" Monroe looked her up and down, disgusted by her uniform. Without answering, he scribbled something in a notepad. "You're parked too close to the curb," he finally sneered. Brooks glanced at her car. "I'm not violating any parking regulations," she said calmly. "And even if I were, it's a minor issue." Her calm demeanor only made Monroe angrier. He stepped closer. "Don't get smart with me, lady. That uniform doesn't put you above the law." Brooks, unshaken, replied, "I'm not above the law, but I do expect respect." Monroe laughed cruelly. "People like you don't deserve respect." Finally, Brooks reached into her pocket and calmly held up her military ID. "I'm a U.S. Army general," she said. "Officer, I think we both know who's out of line here," Brooks said. Monroe barely glanced at her ID before sneering. "I don't care if you're the president, you don't talk to me like that." The situation escalated quickly. Monroe demanded her driver's license and registration, even though she was already outside the car. When she refused absurd demands like emptying her purse on the hood, his anger exploded. He accused her of obstruction and threatened arrest. Brooks stayed calm, knowing any sudden moves could make things worse. But her composure only fueled Monroe's rage, leading to the explosive moment that would soon dominate headlines. As the crowd grew louder, Monroe's bravado crumbled. His hand trembled as he lowered his baton. But the damage was done. Brooks, still pinned to the car, met his eyes coldly. "You're going to regret this," she said. The crowd erupted in support. Monroe's face paled as he realized too late how many people had witnessed and recorded everything. Sirens approached. Brooks straightened her uniform, ready for the next battle. The distant sirens grew louder. Brooks stood tall, untouched by the chaos. Monroe, still gripping his baton, looked shaken as the crowd's voices rose. "Monroe," Brooks said calmly, "I advise you to step back." Her voice, cutting through the noise, reminded everyone she wasn't just any citizen, she was a leader. Monroe hesitated, caught between pride and fear. He wasn't in control anymore. Backup would not save him now. "Backup's coming," he muttered. "Good," Brooks replied coolly, "saves me a call." 2 squad cars arrived. 3 officers stepped out, confusion turning to alarm as they surveyed the scene. A senior officer with salt and pepper hair quickly approached. "Derek, what's going on?" he demanded. Monroe mumbled. She was uncooperative, refused ID. Brooks already held out her military ID. The senior officer's eyes widened when he read it. "General Brooks," he said respectfully. I had no idea. "You weren't supposed to," Brooks cut in, her tone sharp. "This man attacked me after I identified myself multiple times. I expect this handled properly." The senior officer flushed with embarrassment. "Derek, is this true?" Monroe stammered. She was being difficult. "I thought she was faking." "Enough," the senior officer snapped. He turned to Brooks. "General, I sincerely apologize. We'll launch a full investigation." Brooks' voice was cold. "This won't be swept under the rug. My legal team will contact you by morning. I expect disciplinary action by the end of the week." "Understood, Mom," the senior officer said, stiff with tension. Brooks scanned the still recording crowd, seeing not just witnesses but allies. She turned to the senior officer one last time. "Escort me to my vehicle." "Of course, Mom," he said quickly. Another officer stepped forward. Brooks walked to her SUV, head high, composure intact. As she drove off, she glanced in the mirror, seeing Monroe still frozen in place, powerless. Monroe stood frozen, as if the ground had vanished beneath him, but Brooks wasn't finished. The drive home was silent, though her mind raced, replaying every detail: Monroe's arrogance, his rough grip, the baton raised to strike. Her phone buzzed with endless notifications. The video had already gone viral, and General Brooks was trending everywhere. Exhausted but composed, she pulled into her driveway, sat for a moment, then braced herself and went inside. As she poured a glass of water, her phone rang again, an unknown number. "Hello?" she answered, steady. "General Brooks, this is Secretary Porter," a deep voice said. "I saw the footage. Are you all right?" Surprised but not shocked, Brooks answered, "I'm fine, sir." "Fine isn't good enough," Porter replied firmly. "This is unacceptable. The administration stands with you. The president saw the footage too. He wants to meet you tomorrow." Hanging up, Brooks felt anger, exhaustion, and determination. This was no longer just about her, it was about making sure this behavior was never ignored again. The next morning at the White House, Brooks met President, who greeted her with a firm handshake. "I'm deeply sorry for what you endured," he said. "We will act." He promised a DOJ investigation into systemic misconduct and assured Monroe would face consequences. But news came in. Monroe, now on administrative leave, had hired a lawyer and claimed Brooks was the aggressor. Brooks' eyes narrowed. "Then he's not just a racist. He's a fool," she said. Calm and unwavering, Brooks declared, "I'm not fighting just for myself, I'm fighting for everyone who's ever faced this abuse. And I intend to win." The president nodded, the battle lines drawn. In court, tension filled the air. General Sierra Brooks sat tall and composed at the plaintiff's table, flanked by a powerful legal team. Across from her sat Officer Derek Monroe, pale and stiff. After weeks of delays and tactics, his trial had finally begun. The evidence was overwhelming: videos, eyewitness testimonies, and Brooks' calm, devastating account. The courtroom braced for a battle that would send shockwaves far beyond its walls. Monroe stood no chance, but the fact he fought it all sent a message: he wouldn't go down easily. The stern judge entered, called for order, and the trial began. Monroe's attorney claimed it was a misunderstanding, arguing Monroe feared for his safety. He painted Brooks as aggressive. Brooks' attorney, Jordan Ellis, countered powerfully, reminding the jury that a highly decorated Army general posed no threat, and that they weren't here to rewrite history, but to seek justice. The room was silent, the jury focused. Weeks earlier, cracks in Monroe's story had already formed. Bystander videos were submitted to Internal Affairs. Monroe's bodycam, conveniently inactive during the encounter, raised further suspicion. His police union initially defended him but later backed off under public pressure. Protests erupted, demanding not just Monroe's accountability but systemic change. Brooks used her platform to advocate for justice, appearing on national TV. "This isn't just about me," she said. "It's about everyone who has faced discrimination and mistreatment." Back in court, the prosecution called Carla Sanders, a school teacher who had witnessed the entire event. Calm and unwavering, she testified that Brooks was respectful and Monroe was aggressive. Sanders even recorded the incident, and when the video played, the courtroom reacted audibly: Monroe slamming Brooks into the car, raising his baton as she calmly asked him to stop. Monroe's attorney looked visibly uncomfortable. The footage left no room for doubt. Later, Brooks took the stand. Her steady voice held a deep emotional weight. "I faced enemies overseas," she said, "but nothing prepared me for the humiliation that night." She made it clear. Her rank was a responsibility, not a weapon. She stood not just for herself, but for everyone mistreated by those in power. The jury listened intently, visibly moved. Even the judge looked affected. As the day ended, Monroe was called to testify, but his nervous demeanor hinted that the tide had already turned against him. Monroe looked nothing like the confident man from the parking lot. Now nervous and defensive, he claimed Brooks was hostile, but under cross-examination, his story fell apart. "If you were so concerned," Ellis asked sharply, "why didn't you activate your body cam? Why didn't you call for backup?" Monroe had no answer. The courtroom watched his credibility crumble. By day's end, momentum had clearly shifted. That night in her hotel room, Brooks received a call from Ellis. "Monroe's team plans to leak internal memos, trying to frame you for using your influence," he warned. Brooks, exhausted but resolute, replied, "Let them. I'm not hiding." Ellis hesitated. "It'll get uglier." Brooks simply said, "I've been ready my whole life. Let's finish this." The next morning, headlines exploded. "Officer accuses Army General of intimidation," blared one. Leaked memos hinted at pressure from military officials. Monroe's team spun the story fast, trying to portray Brooks as a bully. While hashtags like "Justice for Monroe" surfaced, overwhelming support for Brooks drowned them out. In court, Monroe's lawyer pounced, accusing Brooks of swaying public opinion. "Calm," Brooks answered. "Speaking out isn't about power. It's about accountability." When pressed if her rank gave her unfair influence, she said, "Power comes with responsibility. I've used mine to reveal the truth." Monroe used his to intimidate. The defense then waived the leaked memos dramatically. "Objection," Ellis called out. The judge ignored her, rejecting the unverified documents. Still, outside, the media storm raged. Protesters lined the courthouse steps, some demanding justice for Brooks, others influenced by Monroe's narrative. As Brooks headed to her car, a young girl held up a sign, "We believe you, General Brooks." Brooks offered her a small smile before climbing into the vehicle. "Ever wonder if it's worth it?" Ellis asked quietly beside her. Brooks sighed, "Every day. But giving up isn't an option." As the trial dragged on, the defense pulled every trick they could, but the truth was already out. Monroe's defense called a character witness, praising him as professional, but the prosecution countered with evidence of past complaints about excessive force and bias. The final blow came when Dr. Amanda Sinclair, a forensic psychologist, testified. She explained how implicit bias leads some officers to escalate unnecessarily, especially against Black individuals. She pointed out that Brooks had been calm and compliant, yet Monroe still used force, a clear sign of racial bias. Monroe shifted uncomfortably as the jury absorbed every word. That night, Brooks received a tense call from Ellis. Monroe's team planned to present a surprise witness. Suspicious but ready, Brooks braced herself. The next day, the defense introduced Chris Baldwin, claiming he saw Brooks provoke Monroe. But during cross-examination, Ellis exposed Baldwin's lies and hidden ties to Monroe, leaving the defense in shambles. As the trial neared its end, the prosecution delivered a strong closing, emphasizing evidence and accountability. The defense's arguments felt desperate and hollow. When the jury retired to deliberate, the nation waited breathlessly. Hours later, the verdict came: guilty of assault and misconduct under color of law. The courtroom erupted. Brooks closed her eyes, feeling a surge of relief. She knew the fight wasn't over, but the first step had won. Outside, a crowd cheered wildly, waving signs of justice. Brooks stepped onto the courthouse steps, her uniform gleaming in the sun. Media scrambled for a glimpse as Ellis signaled for silence. Brooks stepped forward, her voice clear over the rover. "I stand not just for myself," she said, "but for everyone who has ever been silenced. Justice is not a gift. It's a right, and today we took one step closer to it." Brooks stepped forward, addressing the crowd with steady resolve. "I'm here today not just for myself, but for everyone who has faced injustice," she said. "This verdict is a step, not the end. True justice demands real change." Cheers erupted as she turned to leave. But before reaching her SUV, a young man pushed through the crowd, handing her a crumpled envelope. "Thank you," he said, voice shaking. Brooks tucked it into her jacket, promising herself she'd read it when the world was quieter. In the following weeks, news outlets dissected every detail of the trial. The verdict sent shockwaves through law enforcement, prompting some departments to implement reforms, while others pushed back. Meanwhile, Brooks returned to work at the Pentagon, determined to stay focused. One evening, Secretary Porter visited her office. "You've sparked a national conversation," he said, voice serious. "But you've also become a target." He warned her about smear campaigns and false accusations being prepared. Brooks' resolve hardened. "I won't be silenced," she said firmly. The attacks began swiftly. Anonymous articles surfaced accusing Brooks of misconduct. Her team countered with official records disproving the lies, but the damage had been done. Brooks' phone buzzed constantly with updates and warnings. "They're trying to wear you down," Ellis told her one night. "Let them try," she replied, though unease gnawed at her. The next morning brought a game-changing revelation. Her assistant rushed in with leaked emails showing a coordinated campaign by the police union to discredit her. An anonymous source had sent them, with a simple note: "The truth matters." As Brooks stared at the documents, she knew the battle had just escalated and she was ready. Brooks' phone buzzed again with a breaking news alert. Threats were escalating, and the police union was scrambling. She set the papers down, her resolve hardening. They could attack her, threaten her, try to discredit her, but they would not break her. The leaked emails shook the nation. News outlets exposed the union's smear campaign, revealing racist and sexist undertones. Outrage exploded across the country. Brooks watched with grim satisfaction but stayed focused. Allies rallied around her, but warnings grew louder. The situation was spiraling. At a high-security briefing, Secretary Porter revealed the source of the leaks: a mid-level clerk from the police union who had acted alone and was now in hiding, facing threats. Brooks' anger flared. "We owe them protection," she said. Porter at Porter, but there was more. Extremist groups were now targeting Brooks directly. Her security was immediately upgraded. This wasn't just a smear campaign anymore, it had become a national security threat. That night, Brooks returned home under heavy security. Her quiet neighborhood now felt like a fortress. Even the simplest routines felt strained. She thought of the brave clerk and the growing list of enemies who feared the truth. Ellis called, warning her to stay cautious. "No heroics," he urged. Brooks promised, but deep down she knew she could never back down. The next day, just as Brooks prepared to leave for a speech at Howard University, her assistant Dawson rushed in, tablet in hand. A new headline blared across the screen. "Anonymous letter accuses Brooks of corruption." Brooks' eyes narrowed. Another smear attempt. The battle was far from over, but so was her determination. The fake allegations against Brooks were timed perfectly, aiming to erode her credibility and distract from the real issues. Furious but focused, Brooks ordered Ellis to draft a statement and rally their allies before the lies could spread further. That evening, Brooks stepped onto the stage at Howard University to a standing ovation. She spoke with power, calling out the smear campaign and vowing to continue fighting until justice was a reality for everyone. The crowd's energy reignited her resolve. But as she left the stage, her security team rushed in. A potential threat had been detected nearby. Brooks was quickly escorted into an SUV, speeding through D.C.'s dark streets toward a safe house. In the backseat, she stayed silent, processing the escalation. Agent Vega briefed her, no clear details yet, but retaliation was suspected for her speech. At the safe house, Brooks remained alert, aware the danger was far from over. She asked about media coverage, but it hadn't broken yet, only a matter of time. Her phone buzzed. It was Ellis. The fake corruption story had been traced to a PR firm linked to the police union. Brooks' anger sharpened. The battle wasn't just legal anymore, it was a full-blown war on truth. Hours passed. The house stayed quiet, but Brooks couldn't sleep. The attacks, the lies, the threats, every move designed to wear her down. But sitting alone in that stark room, she made a silent vow. They could come after her reputation, her safety, her peace of mind, but they would never take her will to fight. Not now, not ever. Sleep barely touched her when Vega knocked on the door, his face grim. He led Brooks to a small office where a live security feed showed a man pacing near her gate, clutching a Molotov cocktail. Vega confirmed they had intercepted him before he could act. The man, linked to an extremist group, refused to talk, but the message was clear: the threats were escalating. Brooks' fist clenched. She ordered increased security and began planning her next move. This wasn't just intimidation, it was war. The next day at the Pentagon, Ellis confirmed the arrested man was tied to the same PR firm connected to the police union. Brooks saw the full pattern: unions, firms, extremists working together. They needed proof and fast. Days of intense investigation paid off when a whistleblower from the PR firm came forward, revealing emails, invoices, and detailed plans to silence Brooks and other reform advocates. The nation exploded in outrage. Protests erupted. Police union officials resigned in disgrace. Standing on the Capitol steps, Brooks addressed the crowd, her voice unwavering. This is not the end. This is the beginning of a movement that will demand accountability, transparency, and true justice for all. The cheers echoed for blocks. Yet with momentum came greater danger. Late one night, deep in Pentagon work, Brooks got another call from Ellis. New intel linked the police union to a private contractor, Midland Security Solutions, a shady company funding intimidation efforts. Midland wasn't just pushing smear campaigns, they were hiring operatives to silence whistleblowers and activists. Brooks stayed calm. She asked if they had enough to expose them. Ellis said not yet, but a former Midland contractor had implored her to talk under strict secrecy. Tomorrow night. Dangerous, high stakes, but Brooks didn't hesitate. She was ready. No matter how dark it got, she would not back down. We don't have a choice, Jordan. If this lead gets us closer to the truth, we have to take it, Brooks said. Ellis sighed but ignored her. That evening, Brooks' pulled into an abandoned warehouse on the city's outskirts. Security was tight, scanning every shadow. Inside, a nervous man in his 40s stood waiting. "You're the general?" he asked. "I am," Brooks replied. "And you're the man with answers." Ben Dawson introduced himself and pulled a laptop from his bag. "Payment records, emails, contracts. Midland's been working with the police union for years, using dirty tactics to shut people down," he said. Brooks and Ellis leaned in as Dawson showed damning evidence linking Midland to smear campaigns and intimidation. Before they could process it, a loud crash echoed. Figures in tactical gear stormed the warehouse. Vega barked orders, shielding Brooks and Dawson as gunfire erupted. They raced to a waiting sub, Dawson clutching the laptop. "They found us," he gasped. "You did the right thing," Brooks assured him. The attack hit the news, fueling speculation about Brooks' battle for justice. Her team worked nonstop, confirming Midland's role in violence, corruption, and ties to top police union officials. Reviewing the files, Brooks' phone buzzed. It was Secretary Porter. "General, this is bigger than we thought," he said. "The president had authorized a federal task force." "You're going public," Porter added. "A press conference with the Doge, FBI, and administration is set. The country needs to hear it from you." Brooks ignored Porter. She was ready. The next day, standing on the Doge steps flanked by officials, Brooks faced a sea of cameras. "Today," she began, her voice strong, "we take another step toward justice. We will not be intimidated. We will not be silenced. And we will not stop until those responsible are held accountable." The crowd erupted in applause. Applause echoed, a powerful reminder of the movement she had sparked. As Brooks stepped away from the podium, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. The fight was far from over, but with each step forward, she moved closer to justice, not just for herself, but for everyone wronged. The federal investigation sent shockwaves nationwide. Overnight, Midland Security Solutions and its police union allies were under intense scrutiny. Federal agents raided offices, seized servers, and issued subpoenas to top officials. The country watched as a web of Porter, racism, and unchecked power unraveled. General Brooks became a symbol of courage and resilience, but the spotlight made her a bigger target. The threats evolved. Her team intercepted encrypted chatter about planned attacks at her public events. Late into the night, Brooks sat with Ellis and Agent Vega, reviewing security updates. "Several police union leaders are tied to Midland's operations," Ellis said, pointing to a folder. "Indictments are coming." Brooks nodded, her face unreadable. "And Dawson?" she asked. "Safe under federal protection," Vega replied, but scared. "Midland's operatives are still out there." Brooks leaned back, mind racing. "We need to stay ahead," she said. "They'll come after anyone involved." Ellis frowned. "Maybe it's time you pull back, Alex. Let the Doge handle it." Brooks shook her head. "I can't. This is bigger than me. If I step back, I send the wrong message." Vega nodded grimly. Then we're ramping up your security. Every move you make covered. The next morning, Brooks arrived at the Pentagon to find Dawson waiting. Ma'am, Midland just filed a countersuit. Defamation and abuse of power, Dawson said. Brooks raised an eyebrow. Let them. Their own documents expose them. Dawson hesitated. They're flooding the media with counter-narratives. It's gaining traction. Brooks sighed. The countersuit was a desperate distraction, but a dangerous one. Contact Ellis, Brooks said. Draft a statement. We're not letting them twist the story. The battle for public opinion grew fiercer. News outlets debated endlessly. Some pundits questioned whether Brooks' fight was causing more division than progress. Social media became a war zone. Supporters rallied under justice with Brooks while detractors cried witch hunt. Brooks stayed focused, but the relentless attacks wore on her. Late one night, she sat alone in her office, the weight of it all pressing heavily on her shoulders. Brooks sat in her living room, staring at the envelope from the young man at the courthouse. She finally opened it. The letter thanked her for standing up, for giving families like his who had lost loved ones to injustice hope again. Tears filled her eyes. It reminded her why she fought, not for herself, but for all those unheard for too long. The following week, federal investigators uncovered a hidden server at Midland's headquarters. One file, titled Operation Silence, detailed plans to target whistleblowers and activists, with Brooks' name at the top. The DOI held a press conference revealing Midland's deep corruption. Brooks stood alongside federal agents, declaring, "We will not rest until justice is served." The country erupted in outrage. Midland's leaders resigned, police union officials were arrested, but Brooks knew it wasn't over. Later that night, Brooks received an urgent call from Ellis. Intel indicated Midland executives and union officials were planning something big. "Whatever it is, we'll be ready," Brooks said. The stakes had never been higher, but she refused to back down. Federal raids soon followed. Midland's leadership was arrested, their crimes laid bare. The police union's corruption was exposed at the highest levels. General Sierra Brooks became a national icon, her courage inspiring millions. Her work continued, drafting reforms, speaking before Congress, mentoring a new generation. The nation finally understood no one was above the law. One morning, President called. "Your work is just beginning. We need your leadership," he said. Brooks gazed out at the Washington skyline, the weight of the moment heavy but welcome. "I'm ready," she replied. In quiet moments, Brooks reflected on the journey the battles fought, the sacrifices made. She thought of the letter from the young man, the families now finding hope, and the future she was helping to build. She knew the road ahead would be long and full of challenges, but she was ready. Always ready. From this story, we learn that silence in the face of injustice is never neutral, it is complicity. It teaches us that respect should never be earned through titles or uniforms, but should be given because of our shared humanity. True justice is not just punishing the wrongdoer, it is changing the way society chooses who to value and who to ignore. And that change begins the moment we refuse to look away when someone else's dignity is under attack. Note: this story is entirely fictional and created for the purpose of raising awareness. It highlights issues of responsibility, justice, and the importance of treating everyone with respect and dignity. We firmly oppose violence, prejudice, and injustice in all forms. Viewer discretion is advised.